So it's that time of the year again, Lyra. We want to do a recap for the year 2024. And I think this is going to be our final recording for this year, right?
Yes, indeed.
Then we're going to have a short break and hopefully we'll come back in January again. But I was just looking at all the episodes that we've been doing. And of course, we've been saying the second half, we sort of have become more consistent, right? But I was just looking at the first episode we did at the beginning of the year, and we kind of mentioned the lessons that we want to highlight for the year. We talk about first, self-determination, second, small government, and third, pursuit of happiness. And I think that's one of the reasons, not the only reason, of course, why we focus so much on American elections, the second half, because we both felt like there is something to be learned, right, in the whole process, not just the result, but the whole process. But I think today what we're going to do is kind of just look through 2024, I mean, we kind of discuss, what are the things that are of interest to you, and then you can raise some of the things happening, and then we can talk from there.
Of course. So do you want to start off?
Well, I can start off, and of course, we mentioned a few times in this show that 2024 is the year of elections worldwide. And just looking at some statistics here, you have some sort of elections in 80 nations, kind of cover 4 billion people. So, I mean, it could be a national election. So sometimes the election could be just for the parliament. Like French, you have the parliament elections, but it's not presidential election, for example. So it's a bit like midterm in US, may not be presidential election year. Then, of course, you have some very important nations that are related to Malaysia, Indonesia, US, of course, we have UK.
Yep.
UK, we did a little bit on UK. But just one of the very interesting facts about this election in 80 nations is that 80%, very interesting, it's also 8, right? 80% of incumbents suffer some sort of defeat. And according to Wikipedia, which I think will be more liberal kind of perspective, and it says that some suffer historical defeat. So what are some of the elections? I know we kind of cover a lot on American elections, but what are some of the other elections that really capture your interest this cycle?
I would say UK. I think personally, I kind of took an interest in the UK election because of Nigel Farage.
Yep.
I mean, he has always been one of those who have been very, very consistent about his stance on Brexit. And really, I think he's like recognizing the dangers of, well, basically uncontrolled sort of border policy. And yet that is the very same thing that sort of drove the British to kind of like have the government that they have today, which is led by Keir Starmer. So, which is, I felt like it is a time of testing for the UK.
Very interesting. You put it from Farage point of view, because when we look at Brexit until now, it's almost 10 years already, 8 to 10 years. And we know very well that the promises of Brexit have not been met by the British government. So, small farmers, all those fishermen, people who wanted more protections from the government are not being met. And of course, uncontrolled immigration, which is not just UK's problem, it is now a worldwide problem. And of course, interesting you mentioned Nigel Farage, because lately have you seen the posturing by Elon Musk about wanting to support what's the party called again?
Reform.
Reform Party. I keep thinking about UK Independent, UKIP, because that was their own name, right?
Yes.
And so, but of course, foreigner cannot give funding directly, but of course, the British HQ of X could easily be the one giving money. I'm sure they can overcome election law, but it caused the British establishment to be very aggravated. And because Elon Musk, I think that the record started to come out that Elon Musk was the single biggest donor for this American presidential election. I think to the degree of 128 million through the various PAC direct or indirect. I mean, to him, it's still small change, right?
Indeed.
Kind of. But I find it very interesting. I think people say it doesn't mean much to him, but no matter where you come from, 128 million US dollar is something. You want to spend that, that's the influence and power of money. But anyway, coming back to British, I mean, I know you also studied in UK before. What's so special about United Kingdom, in terms of the impact it has to our nation, for example?
Well, I think this is the year where a lot of the ideas about decolonization are actually kind of like being brought forth. I mean, especially with what happened in the Middle East. So there's like a lot of talk that mentioned about like repatriation. So literally, like, to what ends do you want to keep counting all this old sins, old trauma and things like that? So I kind of like thought it was interesting because UK is literally at the stage where I guess because they were once the superpower, and these days they are at the stage where I don't think people in 100 years would be like thinking that UK will be at the state where it is now today. So had it not been for the literal progressive sort of ideas, which actually a lot of our Malaysian politicians are embracing.
Yep.
So there are a lot of those who have studied in the UK and they do embrace the sort of I mean, you also have like generation endgame sort of things. I mean, all these things sort of like originated from the UK, and you kind of like see that they bring forth this elite establishment sort of mindset and like, I know better than you. So I guess, I mean, aside from looking at what is happening in the US, I felt like there is also a portion of lesson that we could also learn from the UK as well, where they are literally, I mean, because I mean, we are more similar to the UK than not. So based on that sort of footpath that they have walked through, I mean, there's a lot of lessons to be gleaned from it.
Yeah, I think we kind of did half episodes. Somehow we didn't go too deep, but we did mention one point, and I think, Lara, you brought up an excellent point, that our political elite basically, they glean more from the British system because of the history, because many of the elite, their children, people associated with them, they study in British University or Australia, similar kind of system. But I think what people don't realize is that British has been moving towards the socialist scale for longest time. Look at their healthcare, look at their open borders, and even when you have almost 10 years of supposedly Tories conservative rule, they just kept on breaking promises after promises. And in fact, we mentioned one of the point on how Labour won this time round with almost the same vote share.
Exactly.
Basically, the Tories are not showing out. And in fact, we kind of mentioned that there is a danger for the Pakatan. I don't use Madani, I use Pakatan, because if you have an election in due time in Malaysia, and if Pakatan voters are not happy, they will simply, most of them will simply, I don't think they will vote Perikatan.
Nah,
very,
I think they will
unlikely.
just probably
They
stay
will sit
home.
out. They will sit out. So like UK election, the Tories set out and it's enough to give Labour almost 2/3. So that's the danger, I think, that the Madani, not Madani, that the Pakatan Harapan base will need to be aware of. Then the other thing really interesting about UK is really, recently you talk about the Churchill documentary, right, which was sponsored by his estate in Netflix. I mean, to be fair, I think, if you do a program with the estate, it's going to be more pro-Churchill. But it's interesting that they are quite honest in chronicling the downfall of the British Empire towards the end. Like basically, UK doesn't have strong bargaining power already. In fact, they don't even, it's almost like FDR even consider Russia as a more important ally towards the end for one reason or another. And I think one of the commentators say Churchill basically mortgaged the entire British Empire. He has to use out everything. By the way, do you know that when the war started, the British Empire is like the largest land area of all empire ever existed with 300 million population. So they had to mortgage many things. And basically, after that, they know there's no point to keep certain nation because people are enlightened and they want to leave. So that's the price of World War II. But anyway, I think UK will be something to watch in days ahead.
But I think it's also interesting that since World War II, we have been experiencing the longest time in modern day history, the longest time of peace.
Yes, 70 plus years.
Exactly. I mean, until you have the Ukraine-Russia war and also subsequently the Middle East war between Israel and Hamas.
So is that your second highlight?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So go ahead. So what's the thing that what's the right word? Kind of caught your attention, I guess.
I think it's more like a realignment of superpowers. So there is, I mean, obviously there is certain camp that is a bit more pro-Western. I mean, like you look at US, but you also have that sort of system that is trying to kind of like create a competing structure, competing currency to compete with
like
the
BRICS,
US.
like
Exactly, like BRICS. So you have the alliance from Brazil, Russia, India, China. Then
those
I
are
mean,
the
obviously,
OG, right?
yes. So, but interestingly, this term is not like a new sort of term.
No, BRICS have been around for a long time, and in fact, I was just hearing one guy who is kind of like pro-Trump. Okay, so it's always interesting when you hear pro-Trump, and when they give a more nuanced kind of perspective on BRICS. It's not like, oh, we should just smash BRICS out and things like that. And he's trying to explain why BRICS even exists. And it is because of the weaponization of US dollar. So basically, when you're the dominant currency, how do you weaponize? Today, the strongest power of America is not their military, it's not even their innovation, it's not even their technology, it's their US dollar, because of the way you can sanction. So that has been used. I mean, to be fair, it's not like super frequently. Even Malaysia, right? I mean, which is the next thing I think I want to mention about the coziness of PMX with the Palestine cause. But even, I mean, his coziness not only with Palestine, but even with Hamas. But it's not nearly severe enough to get a direct sanction. Of course not, because America always want to leverage Malaysia as one of the buffer in terms of Islamic relationship. But anyway, so the first thing he said is the weaponization. But the second thing he said is people want a different currency if US dollar is not stable. So US dollar, I've been reading, I think since 1978, the value of US dollar have dropped almost 100%.
Oh my goodness.
And where did that drop? I mean, of course, it's like in Malaysia, it would be like $1 is still 4.5. If they drop 100%, that means we drop how many percent? It used to be 1 to 3, right? That means we drop more than 120%.
Exactly.
But anyway, the thing is, why US dollar continue to drop is because of money printing. It's because of overspending. So this guy is saying that, look, if we want people to have confidence in US dollar, the American government must pledge to control their spending and to stop printing US dollar, because that is the way you dilute the currency. And I thought it's a very nuanced kind of thing. It's like trying to explain why people want to set out an alternative system. It's not like they're so free. I mean, of course, you have people who are antagonists, right? Like Russia, like China, Brazil, India. I think they're there for the economy and things like that. So that would be interesting. I don't know if they could do that, with DOGE, efficiency, Elon Musk. That's what Trump wants to do. But how do you stop 30, 40 years of unlimited spending? It's not easy.
No, I mean, it's not at all. But what do you make of all this? I mean, do you see the positive of this whole site whereby kind of like new economic structure is being created?
It's interesting, because I was just looking at all the episodes we do. We did one episode on Bitcoin. So another thing, of course, 2024, right after Trump, Bitcoin really went up, from
Soaring high.
US dollar 73,000 all the way to, I think, just yesterday, the day before, all-time high, 108,000. We're talking about 35-40% increase since the election result came out. It's crazy. But you see, on one hand, and that's why I'm talking to one of my friends, who we kind of, I don't want to use the word invest. Actually, Bitcoin, you're not investing. You buy because you believe that it is a hedge against inflation. You believe that it could be it could be, I mean, it's still based on potential, a viable alternative system. But the thing is, if US dollar is stable, then it is likely that Bitcoin won't shoot out so fast.
Yep.
So this is the thing that is happening right now. And I think even with Trump's administration, I mean, you mentioned new economy restructuring and things. I think it's happening all the time. So I think at most they could delay it. You know, if Trump control the spending, they could stabilize US dollar and control it. But I think after 40, 50 years of money printing, not to be fair, not just US, right? Even Malaysia, we look at the money supply. It seems like we printed more money in terms of the ratio percentage. So when people can have unlimited funding, it's not easy. You need the whole generation of central banker to die. And so because of that, I think it can be slowed down. That is the reason why I think Bitcoin and things like that have a place as an inflation hedge. Now, of course, by the way, this is not investment advice or things like that. I always say you cannot view, the other day, Lanshi's brother was just asking me about that. The first thing I told him was, you cannot view this as investment. You must look at the system. Do you believe in a concept that we have oversupply, we have unlimited money printing? Then do you believe that there is a system that maybe can mitigate? So if that's you and you don't mind putting some of your seeds there. So I mean, Bitcoin is just one concept, but another thing we talked about the couple of weeks ago, or even 1 or 2 shows ago, citizen journalists, which is something quite novel, right? And I mean, this time with Trump's victory, so much, and even with his cabinet nomination, we saw the power of citizen journalism, never been seen before. And I think I saw just a couple of days ago, Van Jones. Van Jones used to be a advisor to Obama's administration. Of course, a very strong Democrat supporter, and he's like, I think he's like really, really annoyed when people is still asking, why did we lose to this person? And why did we lose to this Trump? And he say, well, he say, I think this is his most honest self. He said, actually, Trump is smarter than all of us. If you continue to ask why he's winning, it shows that you are more stupid than you think. And he just said, in terms of mainstream media, he said he is way ahead of the curve because he discerned that people are not trusting the mainstream media anymore. And remember his campaign 2015, 2016 at the beginning, one of the crowd that he was wooing was the Christian evangelical.
Yep.
And he met with 2,000 pastors. He's not even a Christian himself at that time. Now we're not very sure. But he was telling them, well, do you know that you all have the greatest influence in the country? If you will all be united, you can enact any policy you want, but you are too divided. And if you put your support together, you are a great force. He was telling them. And I mean, what I'm trying to say is that it shows his ability to gauge the mood. And this cycle, he was able to say, look, the workers are being neglected and things like that. So it's just very interesting that things are changing, but whoever gets the drift first, whoever gets the win first, like whoever buys Bitcoin at $100, you're like billionaire today. So that's the kind of thing that is the exciting opportunity, I guess.
Yeah, I thought it's kind of interesting because, I mean, earlier we just talked about Churchill and now we are talking about Trump. I mean, what I observed between both of them, the similarity would be they kind of knew at a very young age that they were created for something great. And even with Churchill, it was like because his dad was supposed to be the prime minister, and yet because of some political setback and things like that, he kind of like died young, and yet he knew that his destiny is literally to be the head and not the tail. And with Trump also, he saw like a lot of the problem with what is happening in New York and things like that, and he just felt like we are being ripped off by so many other nations. And so because of that, I mean, there is that sort of passion that's just sort of like the holy indignation just sort of like rose up within them to just want to lead the country to a greater success. So I felt like that's something that is kind of lacking in our country. We don't have those sort of statesmen where they can literally just, hey, let's just put our heads together and kind of like just move on to the next place.
Yeah, I remember we were just talking about the highlights of 2024, and you wanted to talk about PMX, right? Now, before we get into PMX, just one point on this because I felt it's quite relevant. I think 13th of December, this article on Breitbart by their chief editor Joe Pollack, and I mean the article of course is comparing Trump with another president, Andrew Jackson, the sixth president, who is also called a populist. And it's very interesting because I remember when David Tian was here, even from time to time, we want to talk about populist. What does it really mean, right? Because Sanusi will try to say he's populist, right?
Exactly.
And so a few points, just one or two, and then we'll move to the Malaysian side of the story already. And Pollard say populist is a difficult word to define. It refers to rule by ordinary people, but populist leaders can also become demagogue, and they will exploit popular sentiment to seize power. And they can often do redistributing the wealth, which is a bit like what's happening in Malaysia, right? An approach that has proven disastrous. I mean, everywhere we see socialism doesn't work. It's sometimes associated with protectionism, and that's why people are trying to criticize Trump's tariff that hurts trade and allow insiders to enrich themselves. But then he said this, and he tried to compare and contrast. He said Trump's versions of populism, sometimes called nationalist populism, is somewhat different. And of course, he did decrease the tax and things like that, but it is not to redistribute. It is to create new opportunities. So you see, there's a fine line there. People say, "Oh, you reduce the tax, you enrich the rich." No, it's like you're creating more opportunity. So at the end of the day, the economy will be the judge, right? Then of course, tariff. What about tariff? He is doing tariff because, based on this article, foreign competition, especially from China, has become a national security risk. What does it mean by national security risk? Look at COVID time. Basically, a lot of countries don't have enough supply, essential supply of their own, because you so depend on foreign supply chain. So this is the reason, if it threatens your national security, let's say, for example, we don't even have enough oil, then it is right for Malaysia, for example, to say stop exporting because we don't have enough. It is for your national interest. So this kind of thing, when you use tariff and things like that, it's not wrong, basically. But anyway, to cut the long article short, I recommend you all to read it. In fact, it's called this Blue States Blue. They have this series where they talk about the nation, and he said a lesson in populism from Andrew Jackson for Donald Trump. But basically, at the end of the day, he said, look, what really motivates them is because of their love. They have great passion, and it shows. When you care, people can tell. So I think it's a good time for us to come to Malaysia because one of the things you wanted to mention is, so many things in Malaysia, right? 2024, we have a lot of, we have subsidy cut. We have this very, very aggressive collection of revenue with the highest budget ever announced. Do you feel like there's a bit of redistribution?
Yeah, you start off with redefinition of T20, T15. So, yeah, obviously there is some sort of...
Rafizi is still scrambling, right? He's like, we will take into the account of the lifestyle and expenses. When he came out, I was just like, where has this guy been hiding, right, the last couple of months? But anyway, yeah, continue.
No, even looking at the Multimedia Act as well.
Yeah.
It's so vague. You have to redefine the whole thing. Hey, when it comes to it, we're gonna define it. So,
why do you think they do all these things? What is their motivation?
Honestly, I think they are power hungry.
So to stifle any opposition?
Yes. That would be at the core of it. I felt like they are more leftist than they think. They would like to present themselves as a balanced sort of government. Well, obviously, there's a lot of excuses and things like that. I felt like they are kind of like leftist behavior, as in the thing about leftists is that they can't agree on the value, and yet they can't agree on the facts as well. So I think with that, they get easily offended with, let's say you just kind of point out certain reality, certain pragmatic side to certain things, and they will be quite easily offended. I felt like our Prime Minister is very easily offended.
Yeah, when you look at Fahmi, of course, to be fair, Fahmi is mainly a spokesperson. But overall, this Madani government, I mean, with the way they rush through all the laws and things like that, with very, very, very little consultation. So every time people say we need more consultation, then they will get a bit indirectly or directly offended. You know, it's like, you don't trust us. Of course we don't trust you, man. Your track record is terrible. But that's the kind of feeling you get, right? That they are just kind of like, actually the person that I was reminded the most is basically Barack Obama. Barack Obama, I think it was Rush Limbaugh called him the philosopher king. Philosopher king, basically, I know best. You better listen to me. So, I mean, that's one of the transformations of PMX that was a bit surprised, because before he was prime minister, he was very diplomatic, but he kind of, I don't know. Do you have a explanation or theory why he became like that? Is that his true conditions? And maybe with this, you can kind of come into the next topic, which you mentioned was one of your highlights, the posturing of the Palestine cause by PMX.
Yeah, kind of like what our former Prime Minister Muhyiddin, who mentioned he's more Hamas than Hamas.
Did he say that?
Yeah, he did. I mean, in the Malaysia Kini, the BM version, yeah, he said lebih Hamas daripada Hamas. So
talking about PMX, that is very insulting.
Exactly, but I felt like maybe our Prime Minister is actually kind of like taking it as a compliment. Mm-hmm. I guess. I don't know, because based on the posturing and things like that, it doesn't seem like he is toning down. I mean, obviously now he's a little bit more toned down because of
Trump.
Exactly. So I mean, you can't really have like, Malaysia can't afford to be sanctioned at all. So, but it's just kind of like.
Now, one very interesting thing, just a side point, is remember right after the elections, Hamas leaders were kicked out from Qatar. And now the American, I think Trump intermediary passed a message to Qatar and say, get them back because I want to talk to them. I find it very interesting because I mean, just to give a little bit of context, I was just listening to Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson has been bringing a lot of very unconventional guests, I would say, and most of them is very aligned to him, anti-war and things like that. But I can't remember this guy. Is it Jeffrey something? I can't remember his name. But he's a Harvard professor, and he was saying that the reason we have Middle East war is because American foreign policy has been controlled by Israel. It's a bit like the Yahudi agenda here, which I find really, really absurd. How can one small country, one prime minister, how can one Netanyahu control the whole American foreign policy? But instead, when I think about what Trump did with Abraham Accord and things like that, is if you take out the equation, if you take out Palestine and you encourage Israel to have direct bilateral relationship, with all the nations, then they will automatically lock Palestine out because there's no cause to support you already. So that's one of the things that I find that, Trump wants peace, but he's not going to be willing to spend trillions of dollars on war. And I mean, to give a context, when you have continual war in Middle East for 50, 60 years, a lot of people benefit, right? Weapons manufacturer, consultants, think tank, United Nations, everyone get the gravy never stops.
Exactly.
So I think that's, if you come from that point of view, Trump seems a lot smarter than all these people who try to blame Israel or Palestine one way or another. Just take away the factor.
But I think one thing about Trump is that he doesn't compromise. I mean, even with all this posturing peace through strength, he is firm in his decision, as in like the US support for Israel as well, because a terrorist is a terrorist. So I think on that position, but what I felt like a lot of us leftists are doing is that they are bending over their back to literally just, I mean, because now what is happening in Syria also.
Yeah.
So I mean, how do you like keep back your words and just say that he's not the new leader is not a terrorist? I mean, from Al Qaeda. So I think people are, if you kind of like, I mean, if you're in that sort of delusion, eventually you're gonna like be literally cuckoo.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, American foreign policy have been deeply entrenched. Basically, their capability will be if today they want a regime change in Middle East, any nation, even someone like Saudi Arabia, they can do it. That is how deep they are in. But of course, should they do it or not, it's a different story. That is the reason why there is a lot of apprehensions and why BRICS, we talk about why you have this kind of thing, because you have this, you want to call them deep state or whatever, they are constantly threatening you with a big chopper like that. So, but there will be something to watch, I feel, for 2025 and for Malaysia also. But what else do you think? Like, do you think our PMX will change his posture and maybe he should have a different topic?
Well, I guess it's a little bit hard to say, because I thought like Turkey is like kind of like a bit more stabilized, and yet I think he is kind of triggered or maybe reinforced by Turkey's position. Especially, I mean, even with the Syrian war that is happening, I mean, you also see the involvement of Turkey. I mean, obviously, they're very, very quick to go into certain buffer zones as well. So with that, I think maybe Prime Minister is trying to gauge the mood and just generally seeing what's the foreign policy is going to be like.
Yep.
But I think when it comes to internally within that like domestic affair, I don't think he's kind of like slowing down in his posture to be like literally a prime minister for the Palestinian cause. So I think on that note, I'm not too sure if he's losing the sort of support, maybe even from the core supporters,
Yeah, did you see the video, right? I think one member of parliament from Muscadine was asking the deputy foreign minister, right? And I think David Dian showed us that video about, what do you think of Hamas as being, what I think the Muscadine MP was saying that how come there's no condemnation of Hamas? And you could see the deputy foreign minister, I think from Sabah, right? And he was like scrambling.
Very uncomfortable.
Very uncomfortable, but in the end didn't really answer. And that's something it will be interesting to note. Now, due to time factor, let's mention one or two more things that you have observed. Anything, domestically or internationally that really stood out for you, 2024?
Well, I mean, locally, we do have the death of our former governor of Sarawak.
Yep.
I mean, or even former chief minister of Sarawak.
Yeah, chief minister. I think that's he's well known more for that, right? So I mean, we did one entire episode on him, but if you want to kind of give one or two lines, or why is it significant, and what does it hold for us in the future?
I think it signifies the end of an era. I mean, obviously, you have a very, very corrupted sort of, I mean, obviously well hidden, I mean, even legalized sort of corruption that is happening in Sarawak. But I think with Sarawakians, with their constant posture for Sarawakians, I mean, I completely understand. It's kind of like a make America great again, but maybe make Sarawak great again sort of posture. But if we're not careful, we could be literally captured by the sort of ideology where it might not be good after all for the state, for the region. So I think Sarawak do need to come to that position where they are able to leverage on the fact that, I mean, Indonesia is moving their administrative to, I mean, literally in the like neighboring. So I guess with that, we do need to be a bit more vigilant to see how GPS is playing its card, because I mean, obviously the things that GPS is doing now, I mean, obviously it's the party of the former chief minister.
Yep.
So I mean, with that, people need to know that, I mean, are they sheep or are they wolves in sheepskin,
It's a very, very good point, because you know my position on GPS, which I totally don't trust them at all. But what I find, a lot of Sarawakian, their positions will be, well, they're still better than all the Malayan party and things like that. And to that, I would say you have to observe more and don't be so quick to conclude. Because the whole, I mean, we talk about the resurgence of Sarawak for Sarawakian as well as in recent time, it is maybe just the last 6, 7, 8 years. And even then, we at least have 3 state election already. I think one of the things, I mean, just 2 points I think people have to be aware of is first, it's going to take a long time. Even with Trump's MAGA and things like that, it started way before that. It started with the Tea Party and dissatisfaction. It's like 20 years kind of thing. Then the second thing, of course, you mentioned GPS itself. It is so linked with Tai Mahmud, who is probably the most corrupt leader in the whole history of Malaysia in the last 50 years. I dare to say that. So can they really be trusted to reform? I mean, of course, never say never. Never say don't give chance to people. But I am very doubtful. I have serious doubt because when you are, it's a bit like what we mentioned earlier on. When you are so used to money printing, can you be motivated to stop printing money? When you are so used to, I can just take whatever land I want, I can just take whatever natural resources I want. And now I'm going to get even more from federal. I'm going to get education. I'm going to get, what's the thing? Health autonomy. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine all the cronies having control of the supplies and things like that? It can potentially blow up in the face of Sarawak in the worst possible way.
Yeah, I feel that actually we generally Malaysian could be too chill about the whole corruption agenda. It's like we are no stranger. Exactly. So it's like, well, if it doesn't affect me, okay. I mean, I'm gonna like just go day by day. But how about you? I think maybe one more.
One more. Let me think. I mean, a lot of things we cover already. I was just looking at 2024. I mean, we cover so much on the American election, so let's not go there too much. Yeah, but one of the things, of course, which person. I mean, this is more personal, but at the same time, it kind of manifests. You see the whole woke movement, the whole very preachy movement. It kind of affects sports. It kind of affects Hollywood, and you see a lot of Hollywood movies are not doing well. Star Wars is not doing well. Disney Plus is doing very badly. NBA all-time low rating, and the commissioner come out and say maybe we should brighten the court. And in fact, seriously, it comes to the point. You know me. I'm such a big fan of Jordan and things like that. I really don't care about NBA at all already. And this is another thing. I saw Joe Pollard or Breitbart mention it again. And very rarely they do an article on NBA, but he just say, look, if this election shows anything, is if you lose the normal, ordinary people, you will lose them for good. So I'm just seeing that, we talk about an opportunity in government, we talk about an opportunity in economy, but I see an opportunity in arts and entertainment, that maybe a whole restructuring on how things are done. It's like Hollywood, sports, professional sports, so much money has been there. And at the end of the day, if people don't care, people don't tune to watch, people don't go to stadium, you can become irrelevant. So I'm seeing that maybe it could happen. But you're seeing that already, with baseball, American football. We talk about when BLM was raging, football, EPL, English Premier League was the first one to say nobody can wear any armband on BLM. They're the smart one and things like that. So football, the American want to call it soccer, but we don't call it soccer, right? Football has always been, I mean, it's very corrupted at the organization level, but at the fan level, it was always more regional. We can be communist if we want to. You had the Catalan independence supporting Barcelona. You have the worker class supporting Liverpool. You have the rich people supporting Chelsea or whatever. You have the elite supporting Milan and Juventus. So it's okay. I mean, that's how the world should be, right? That you want to be like this. You want to be a certain way. I have a company. I only want to employ men because I need strength and things like that. Why is that wrong? But we have I mean, I know it's a very general kind of approach. I just felt like 2024 maybe we have put a nail into the woke movement.
Yeah, I'm so glad. I mean, because what happened with BLM movement as well, I mean, with George Floyd, I think there is like even new evidence that is coming out that he didn't die.
Yeah, it was came out and the judge is considering it.
I'm the guy. Wow, what a great end to 2024.
Because of Daniel Perry's thing, it's like if a person is acting crazily, that's a correct way to restrain, because it's like then he had COVID, then he had all kind of health issue,
Yeah, and drug abuse.
and the coroner couldn't even come up with that's why you see at the end of the day you can have all the evidence, but if you have a very partisan jury or judge or whatever, then you don't get justice at all.
Yeah, but I'm glad. I think you mentioned before once in this show whereby you rather have like 99, the guilty ones escape rather than having one innocent person that is jailed. So I think in this case, hopefully we can see like literally a reinstatement of the justice system, and I mean the sort of restructuring that we can begin to put hope in.
Yep. So I think our time is kind of up. But I mean, 2024 has been very, very interesting. But do let us know what you want us to talk more. I know we have been focusing on certain topics. We try to find certain, of course, it's area of interest, obviously. I mean, we can't talk about things we're not interested in, and also areas of familiarity. So I think viewers and listeners, you have to pardon us if we focus more on certain area. But at the same time, we are more than happy to get some questions and feedback, maybe, of course, certain things, we talk about, briefly mention something like the health insurance kind of thing, and, just talking with Lanxie, it's like, wow, it's so technical, right? It's like, can we even talk about it without an expert here? But those are the things that, Prime Minister kind of promised he will tackle. So those are the things that we might be covering
in 2025.
Yeah, which is next month already.
Yes.
So I think that's all the time we have for today. So until next year.
Yes, until 2025.
Okay, bye-bye for now.
All right, bye-bye.